Welcome back, everybody, to another video. Gabby and Spence here with Core 4x4, and we are on our XJ series. In our first video, if you missed it, we disassembled the entire front end. It was super rusty, and there are definitely some details in there that are going to be necessary for installing our long arm kit, which we are installing today.
I'm really excited for this video because we are going to be doing a step-by-step install of our long arm kit on this XJ. It's pretty straightforward. There's just a little bit of drilling and a little bit of cutting to clearance everything, but we'll show you how to do that, and yeah, let's get started. So we are going to start off a little backwards. We're going to put the springs and shocks on first, just so we have something attached to this axle to keep it from falling on us. Oh, I didn't know. I was just waiting for you.
And we're live.
Saturday night. Whoa. I took the easy one. There we go. Okay, I wanted to run a bigger bolt on these shocks because your factory shock is like an 8mm bolt. So we're going to step up to a 3/8 by 1 inch. On these, we just had to clearance them a little bit, so we ground out the eyelet, and now it should bolt right up. So we're gonna get right into some of the cutting here. You do need to remove your factory lower control arm mount. The best way to do that, I like to use a Sawzall with a short blade, because the blade is going to be inside the bracket if you're cutting from the outside in on that first cut, and then even on the back. You can use an angle grinder with a cutoff wheel. I think this is a little bit cleaner and it's a little easier to make look nice. But yeah, I'll show you how I do it. A point of note when trimming the back side of this bracket, if you're doing it like I am, where you're trimming from the inside out or the outside in, your fuel lines run right along the frame behind here, so just be careful not to hit those when you're cutting. So that's it for the driver's side. It's not pretty, but this isn't a show Jeep. It is a feeder Jeep. You can cut your welds here and drill out your spot welds and get all the extra metal off and clean it and making it look nice and flat and all that jazz. We will put some spray paint on it to keep it from rusting more than it already is. That's it for the driver's side bracket. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. Now that we have both lower control arm mounts off, I did want to point out that we do need to do some extra clearancing right here along the frame rail, or along the unibody. So this bracket, or this part of the bracket, sticks out a bit far. Your upper control arm is going to go basically right between the exhaust and the unibody here. We really want to just give ourselves as much room as possible here when we're articulating. So we're going to take off even a little of this pinch seam along this bracket and just trim it up and give us as much room as possible. All right, on the first video, we did all the tear down. We did leave the cross member on though. To do this install, you need to remove your factory cross member, which is 2 bolts on the frame rail and then your 4 bolts here on your transmission mount. Make sure you support your transfer case back here. You don't want it hanging on the motor mounts. That's not good. We'll get this off and then we're gonna mock up our brackets and mark off our holes to drill through the frame. And that should be the last of the drilling and cutting, and then it all goes together after that. I did want to mention if you're starting from straight factory, you will have a stud and a bolt in your cross member. This one, the stud has already been removed, but if you have a stud, you do need to take it out and just use our new hardware when you put on the frame brackets. The easiest way to do that is vice grips, or you can put 2 nuts on and spin it out. You just got to spin the stud out. It is threaded in, so just turn it out. Don't cut it. You need to reuse the thread. We're just gonna give ourselves a mark here. Okay. So for the frame brackets on this install, we do need to clearance a little of this pinch seam to get that upper control arm mount up inside the unibody. So I just held the bracket up, lining up with our cross member holes, and kind of drew on the pinch seam to give me an idea. But I'm going to take about 1/4 to 1/2 inch out of this general area, and then we'll just test fit it and trim until it works. First try. Look at that. Cool. Now we got to do the other side. Just wanted to take a second and mention that we did design this kit to be used with frame stiffeners if you have them. Frame brackets are slotted, so you can go as much as 1/2 inch wider. You're gonna have to trim more of the pinch seam if you have frame stiffeners to get that upper mount inside, but it can be used with frame stiffeners. Don't let that stop you. Oh, you want to line up with this. Now that all our clearancing is done, we've dry fit the brackets to mark out our holes to drill through the unibody. On the rear hole, you're gonna drill all the way through both sides. On the front hole, you're just gonna drill through the front side and use this nut tab right in here to catch that bolt on the back side. So this catch tab just goes in this hole that's already in your subframe. Yeah, and that's how you bolt these up. When torquing these down, you do wanna do the unibody bolts, the ones that go all the way through first. And that'll really seat the bracket up against the unibody. And then you can tighten these up to pull it up. And then we'll put the cross member on. One other note, you can just leave this up here and drill through these holes if it helps you line up. You kind of want to go as straight as possible so you can hit the backside here and have a nice square bolt on this back one. I don't like doing that because it takes the powder off the hole and then you can rust. So I'm going to mark it and then take it off and then drill. But it is easier to get your hole straight and get lined up if you just drill through these holes with your drill. And it's a 5/8. You need a 5/8 drill bit.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
That's how long it's been.
Huh. We did it! Get close. So drilling went pretty smooth. We're gonna get these ones bolted up. On this backside bolt that goes all the way through the unibody, you're gonna put this big washer on the inside to disperse the load that this bolt holds. We're going to torque this, and then we'll do the frame bolts. We are getting ready to torque these down. On the big bolts that go through the unibody, they are 160 foot-pounds. On the small ones that go up inside, they are 70 foot-pounds. What did we change on this lollipop? There we go. Don't fall in. This is the fun part. We'll see how good I am at it. Okay guys, we got the cross member in. We're gonna go ahead and torque everything down. On these end bolts that attach to the frame brackets, these are gonna be 130 foot-pounds. You just wanna make sure that your drivetrain is centered because these are slotted on the frame brackets for frame stiffeners like we talked about. So your drivetrain can shift back and forth while you're moving everything around. So just make sure it's centered before you torque everything down. And then next, we're just throwing the arms on and getting the axle centered in the wheel well. So we'll do all our final adjustments in some of the next videos when we get the front end completely together with the WJ knuckle swap that I want to show you guys. Cool, so after we torque down these bolts, we're gonna get started on putting the arms in, and it's really gonna come together. All right guys, we're getting ready to bolt the long arms in. Before that, we're gonna set some lengths to get started with. On the lower control arms, that's pretty straightforward. We're gonna just start with a simple 31 inches eye to eye for this 4-inch lift. On the uppers, they're a little more difficult to measure. You wanna make sure your joint is straight in the housing when you're pulling these measurements. But on the upper one, we're just gonna go off the inside dimension because you'll get two different measurements. If you flip it over and go this way, it's gonna be about 1 inch longer. So we're gonna go off this inside dimension, and we're gonna start at about 32 3/4 on the uppers. And again, we're gonna do 31 on the lowers. Hold still. There we go. I know. So as I hit it. Go ahead. Now the other side's gonna be a pain.
Okay.
There you go. All right, now that we got all the arms in, I did want to talk about clearancing a little bit. We do have the high clearance bend on the lowers, so it bends up so your ground clearance is better. This is at full droop and we're not quite touching, but if you want to run a higher lift or if you just want that extra room, you do need to clearance the shock mount a little bit. Also, now that the arms are in, it is a good time to check your clearance on the pinch weld trimming that we did up inside the frame rail. So we're going to check that and make sure our upper arms are going to clear when we travel. Now that we have the arms in and we've checked all our clearances, we're going to get to torquing these down. On the lower control arms, your bolts are 140 foot-pounds. On the upper frame side, it's 90 foot-pounds. And on the axle side, you're going to do 70 foot-pounds. Now, if you're running the factory rubber bushing on your axle housing still, you do want to wait until you're on the ground at ride height to torque that down so you don't ruin your bushing. The rubber you want to wait to torque down while you're on the ground because it does have a fused crush sleeve. So if you torque it in the air and then set it down, it will have a preload that will cause your bushing to fail prematurely. Everything else on this kit has an independent ball center, so you can torque it in the air. Be mindful of that upper bushing if you're still running rubber. If you're running poly or a Johnny joint, you can torque that in the air. But if you're running rubber, put it on the ground. Torque specs on the jam nuts. On your lower control arm, it's 250 foot-pounds. On the upper, it's 200 foot-pounds. Now, there is Johnny joints on all ends, so we're going to put some wood to keep our Johnny joints from rotating, keep them straight in the brackets. That's it, guys. The long arm kit is installed. We're going to be waiting on the alignment because there's a lot of other things we want to do with this Jeep. One of my favorite things is the WJ knuckle swap. That's going to be in one of the next videos. But next week, we're going to be working on the rear end where we're tearing the leaf springs off and getting shackles on and just getting the lift kit all together before we put the tires on and set it on the ground.
It's gonna be good. This series is coming along very nicely. Like, yeah, this Jeep's kind of a hunk of junk, but I love kind of bringing it back to life, and I'm really excited to see it rip on the trails. So thank you so much for tuning in this video. If you guys ever have questions, comments, concerns, please comment down below or contact us. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see y'all in the next one.
See you in the next one.